Nobody can change my energy. Nobody can hold me sick. I will let alone negativity. Nobody can hold me man. Nobody can change my energy. Nobody can. Nobody can. Everybody show me some strength. No weakness. Show me a way come. Strength. No weakness. Whatever we are. Strength. No weakness. Show me a way come. Everybody strength. No weakness. Whatever we are. Not when you're old. Your enemies, they must tremble. Your enemies, they must tremble. Yo, I'm ready to roll. Everything has to humble. Everything has to humble. I'm gonna go get. I just go hard. I just go hard. And I'm a kind of fella. Put my trust in God. Put my trust in God. That simple means say nobody can hold me, man. Nobody can change my energy. Nobody can hold me sick. I will not allow negativity. Nobody can hold me, man. Nobody can change my energy. Nobody can. Nobody can. Yo, just show me some strength. No weakness. Show me a lion come. Strength. No weakness. Show them who we are. Strength. No weakness. Show me a lion come. Everybody strength. No weakness. Show them who we are. That's when you roll. Your enemies, they must tremble. Your enemies, they must tremble. Yo, that's when you roll. Everything has to humble. Everything has to humble. Right now, you have to stand on this battlefield.
Williams Funeral Service serve you with dignity and compassion as you mourn. Every day, we embark on the journey of life, and one day, the journey will end. It's on that day that you can entrust the celebration of life of your loved ones to David Williams Funeral Service. Call 718-291-3823.
Yeah. You gotta be.
Yes. Hey. Welcome to the ride. Welcome to Monday. Yeah, Monday on the ride. How you guys doing? Hey, Nikki Edwards, how you doing? Lydia James, how you doing? Patricia Cornwall. Marva, how you doing? Yeah, man. Welcome to the ride. Welcome to the ride. Yulene Alexander. Let me tell you guys in for another one of these history lessons. You know, just a few days ago, we had Mr. Livinston Nelson, who is a history book in real life. We were speaking about the Grenada Revolution from the perspective of, well, Livingston Nelson and what his historical recollections were, right? But we had to stop short right before we talk about the American invasion on the 25th of October. And we didn't get too much into the house arrest of Maurice Bishop and the assassination of Maurice Bishop and his colleagues on the fort. So there are still more to the history lesson that you guys need to get, right? So we're going to continue from there, but we're going to add some other components to this class. We have Mr. George Worme, who is as he called himself, a consultant for the New Today paper, which is one of the leading newspaper in Grenada today. Currently, it's online. You guys could check it out. We'll talk more about that. And of course, we have Mr. Livingston Nelson here with us. Now, what is significantly important about this program here today, right? Let me turn up my light a little bit. Is that Mr. Worme recently did an interview with one of the key players in the revolution. One of the key players, right? General Hudson Austin. Why I say it's very significant because a lot of key upper level, high level position people that have historical recollection, it's been very difficult for them to speak, right? But George Worme from the New Today worked his magic and got General Hudson Austin to speak. And today we're going to play back part of that speech and also give you a link so you could go and listen to the full length versions of this interview. And it's very in depth, and I think everyone should go ahead and listen to it right? Compliments again the New Today paper. So, guys, it's a lot to digest today. A whole lot to digest today. So get ready. And also, I want you guys to participate as well, right? Participate. But before we go any further, this is what I want everybody to do. Go ahead and share the program right now.
Charming this time, son.
I want everybody to go ahead and share the program right now. Everybody share the program right now. Cindy B, share it. Wendy C. McGuire, thank you so much. Yes, yes, yes. Everybody share it. Everybody share it. Let's build that numbers up. And let me tell you something. There is a thought that going around, right? That we don't like good things. We don't like good information. They say we only like a whole set of bacchanal and TB. I want a little change that mindset right now and show the world that we could sit, we could listen, we could participate in a very powerful discussion and historical lesson. It's important. So, everybody share the program. Hey, thank you, Michelle. Everybody share the program. I'm talking to myself as well. I'm going to share it a few times because I don't know for the life of me, right? Why I grew up in Grenada. I went to years and years of school. I went to St. Andrew's Anglican Secondary School, SAS. I was there for 3 years before I migrated to the US. And a lot of those information I never learned about. They never taught us in school. Instead, I know so much about the Nina, the Pinta, and the Santa Maria. And I don't know much. And not only me, I'm talking about people even in my age group. So we learning this information not from history books, because there are very few history books that give us these actual facts. So every year, our aim is to educate ourselves on this information. Hey, La Loba, how you doing? Pick up yourself. Let me share, guys. I'm sharing right there. All right. Monique, Dolores, Lydia, you share already? All right. La Loba, you share too? Hold on, there's one more. I'm spending all this time at the beginning of the tab because I want everybody to see the importance. Yeah, all the way in South Africa. How you doing? Also, we're live on 107.9 J Wanda FM. That's in Brooklyn, New York. So all the folks that's locked on J Wanda, big up yourself. Thank you so much for locking on and being a part of our program today. Yes, hold on. One more share, and I'll bring in my panelists, my guests. Rise. I want everybody to see this. Everybody. All right. Okay, I'm done. I'm all shared out. All right, guys. So help me welcome my panelists today. Open up their mics. Bring them on. Gentlemen, how are you doing? Well, Mr. Livinston Nelson almost needs no introduction. He's been on the program here so many times. He probably should get some kind of membership. Yeah. You should get official member to the ride. And Livinston, I got to say thank you so much, because you bring so much knowledge to this program, and I really appreciate it. And you're so open to dedicate your time to come and speak with us. So I got to say publicly again, I appreciate you, my brother. Thank you so much.
Welcome, and good night to all the listeners. We're going to have a ride tonight, hopefully.
Yeah. And my other friend, that's the first time on the ride, Mr. George Worme. Again, he's a consultant for the New Today paper. You guys check out the New Today paper, always keeping you guys abreast of what's happening back in Grenada. It's one of the top newspaper, the leading newspaper on the island. Mr. Worme, how are you doing, my brother?
Well, first of all, let me thank you. It's a privilege to be on the program as a first timer. And before I say anything concerning why I was invited here, I really want to thank General Hudson Austin. for giving me the opportunity on two occasions to interview him on events surrounding the 1979 to 83 Grenada Revolution. The truth is, General Austin is a witness to history. And I will invite Grenadians at home, the diaspora, wherever they are, to listen to what the general had to say concerning the most tragic events that ever take place in Grenada, I would say in the last 50, maybe 100 years. I
True.
hope that I can um, make a meaningful input in the program here this evening.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely, absolutely. Um, let's start from that perspective, right? Kind of creating an understanding who is General Austin and what role he played, and he, General Austin, as a young man growing up. You did in part one where you got all that information. So just summarize it for us a bit. Who is General Austin? What was his upbringing like?
Okay, let me say this to you. I was very fortunate to live within 20 yards away from where General Austin grew up. I am really from Manjaloo. General Austin is also from Manjaloo. And our house was directly opposite where General Austin family lived. So I know him pretty well. General Austin is 84 years, he will be 84 in April. My mother will also be 84 in April. And both of them grew up as boys and girls in the village of Manjalo going to the same school. So you understand the family link. The general came from very humble family. But one thing I will tell you, the general, he doesn't have a master's degree or anything like that. But I can tell you something. He's a very educated man and very shrewd.
Yeah, because he spoke about not passing common entrance because at the time he had chicken pox.
Yeah.
So he was not able to sit the common entrance exam. Nevertheless, when he speak, you could tell that he's a very intelligent man. Like he probably didn't have that common entrance certificate or that common entrance pass, but he really is a learned person.
Oh, yes. Because General, he took private lessons, And in the first interview, you will see where he talked about it. And he got subjects. Now, he was supposed to go on to tertiary education, but things happened. And the furthest he reached, I think, was Cast in Jamaica, where he did engineering. And he qualified as an engineer. And that is, I suspect, one of the reasons why he was made Minister of Public Utilities for Construction in the Revolution, because of his background.
Hmm. Hmm.
So he's no, I mean, he is no fool, I can tell you that.
Right, right. Livingston, based on you your historical recollection, what do you remember? How do you revere General Austin? What kind of person is he? Based on just what you heard and what you know.
Well, the thing is, I don't really know him that much, I must say. But from all indication, as Worme said, he seemed to be a shrewd person. To be considered as general, it meant that he had some level of awareness, maybe life experience that endear him to that position. Well, he was, I know from what I pick up from him, was an extremely daring man. There are stories that say that one day from St. Paul, General Huston was on a van, a rover, and that was in the heyday of Gary. And he was basically challenging the police. He was this determined, strong headed person. Passing through the street, I think probably was armed with a pistol in the heyday of Gary. So, but apart from that, I don't know a lot of him. What I can say though, during the revolution, at some time there were many efforts to sideline his authority, to sideline him, and decisions were taken behind his back, and he had to somewhat follow some of those instructions, and that were already taken, particularly when the CC became the dominant force in the Grenadian politics. So that is as much as I know. But apart from that, I think I would trust Wong's information as it relates to his order, mannerism, or characteristics, etc. But that is what I can recollect from what I pick up from him.
Yeah, I guess you could bring us up to speed as it relates to how he got involved with the dual movement and how he became in politics. Well, as he said in the interview, he never wanted to run as a politician. He more wanted to be a part of helping people. So tell us about his.
Julia,
Yeah,
before you go to Worme, at the um, John Bro, the incident that happened in Las Vegas,
yeah,
there was a trial, and the person that actually the judge was General Hudson Austin. So he was way back into the revolution when they put John Bro on trial as it relates to the people's trial. He was the magistrate. So again, it means that he had a long stay in the struggle in the whole compilation of the revolution.
right.
Sorry, Wam. Sorry, yeah.
Yeah. Tell us about the individual in terms of his introduction and getting into the dual movement and how he met Morris Bishop.
Okay. In the first interview, the general himself explained those things. Um, he came from basically a Gary background because in those days, the poorer class in the society leaned towards GLP and Gary. And he explained he didn't like some of the things Gary were doing. He felt that Gary just wanted people to remain poor so they can continue to vote for him. He was not interested in lifting them out of poverty. So he found himself going into GNP, and he he didn't like GNP style of politics, laid back. And when Unison Whiteman came back from overseas and formed the Jewel, he went with the Jewel. And I don't know if people know that New Jewel movement was really a formation of two political parties, Jewel and MAP. Morris came back from England and he had MAP, he and Kenny Radix. And they merged, and then they call it the New Jewel movement.
Right.
So Hudson Austin was always a foundation member of the New Jewel movement. And
What? Go ahead. Go ahead.
yeah, what he said happened is that after years of struggle against Gary, and they saw the direction in which Gary was going with the Mongoose gang and whatnot, they took a decision to form a National Liberation Army, the NLA. And he was given responsibility. He was put in charge of the NLA. And he said in the first interview that I did with him that he was taken secretly to Guyana unknown to people. And he got military training in guerrilla warfare, all sorts of training. So he came back into Grenada as a trained military man.
Yeah. Lydia James is saying, what does MAP mean?
Movement for the Assembly of People.
Okay. All right. That answers the question. What was his dismay, or what about Gary that he did not like?
Well, I just said it, that he said, okay, like for instance, he was specific. He said he saw the kind of houses Gary wanted to build for people, like a box. And he said he wanted to build something more decent for them.
Yeah.
And remember, he had a background in construction. And then he talked about when he decided, look, I am going to move away from Gary. He talked about the victimization that he himself suffered.
Yeah. And what he also mentioned, and guys, we fast tracking part 1 and part 2 because I want to play part 2 and part 3 to give you guys perspective. So we just leading up to that. Hudson Austin also spoke about how he perceived Gary to want to keep Grenadians illiterate by when they had all this ballot that was incorrect, was invalid ballot, they didn't make the X properly, And instead of he teaching his followers how to create the proper X, instead he went into Parliament and create some legislation to say whatever marking that was made, then that is an X.
Well, I'll answer it this way. If you know when the revolution came into being, they formed something called the Center for Popular Education. So you can uplift the educational standard of the people. The point Hudson Austin was making is that Gary was interested in keeping people in a particular state of mind so they could depend on uncle. And every time election called, he's guaranteed a vote. That's the point he's making.
Right. Okay. So that leads us up to the first part of the interview we're gonna take in right now, guys. I want you guys to listen to this. This is Hudson Austin speaking. Again, this is an exclusive interview done by Mr. George Worme on the General Hudson Austin. That was in part 2 of the October 1st interview. Listen to this, guys. And will anyway, any place you want to stop to interject any particular part of it, guys, feel free to do that. All right. And we'll pause it and we'll talk a little bit more about it. Here is a part 2 of the interview with George Worme.
Today, the general has some doubts about the manner in which John Philip was killed. We return to the interview.
Richie, I want to switch focus here and look at some of the dark side of the revolution. At some point, many Grenadians who started to become disenchanted with the process could be heard whispering that the revolution was starting to devour its own children. Fingers were pointed at the arrest without charge or trial of some persons who helped to make the revolutionary process itself. One of the big names was John Philip, and you were very close to him. It is alleged that he was seen as becoming anti-revolutionary and had to be gotten rid of, and the bomb blast at Queen's Park was used as the pretext to physically eliminate him. What's your response to this?
Eliminated? Okay, let me tell you something about the whole John Philip thing. John Philip was a guy, was my very good friend. I'm the one who brought John Philip into the revolutionary process. We used to work down together, one help one another, clean up lands and all kind of things. But on the morning of the revolution, we had John Philip and the first secretary. After the revolution, if somebody went up on the fort, and John Philip was up there, kind of in charge with some of the men after him, because you know the police had back in the place. And John from that morning get guess what with John Philip. Guess what? John Philip didn't want to be a revolution. He wanted to be a bandit. John Philip wanted to take some of them men and go and break a bank. Barclays Bank to be sir. That is the British. Not understanding political connections and so. Because the British government is one of the government who supported the revolution. All the money for the airports and so we got England. All the chunks and so for the Eastern Main Road, England. When I did get to know the truth, one of the guys come and tell me, look what John Philip wanted to do. One of the guys we had, I don't call his name, come and say, he said, John Philip want us to go and break a bank. Why? So I tell them that nonsense. I said, we can't be doing that kind of thing and call yourself a revolutionary mandatory. And you know, John Philip get us fall from that, from the first morning of the revolution. Right? You know, Gary had a place they used to call, you know, sometimes you should call it again.
Evening Palace, John. Evening Palace? Evening Palace.
Evening Palace. And one of the guys come and tell me, he said, you know, John Philip take a lot over and he go in the Evening Palace and he take away almost all the people drinks they had there and bring it up in the house. Well, now I could hide these things for Morris. I told Morris what it was all about. But Morris made the mistake and he went to tell Moran Code. Moran Code didn't want a man like John Philip around because he can't bulldoze Sean Phillip. Sean Phillip is not an easy fella to deal with. And if you notice, when the whole incident with Sean Phillip took place, Morris was out of the country. And it was this Cornwall, when the thing took place in Queen's Park. Took place in Queen's Park.
That's the bomb blast you're talking about.
The bomb blast, that bomb blast. One of the guys said, Stuart Phillip, to the dinner with the Woodland boys and some other fellas, but they planned it the night before.
When you say there, they were done by the party meal?
Yeah. I know all of that. But to this day, I have no truth about it. But what happened is, Bernard met with some other fellas on them, and they decide that they have to lock up Sean Phillip, and they find Morris from the other with them. So they send some men, Cornwall on it, listen, all this Cornwall on it, when they hit to go to Sean Phillip house, and wait it. He had some other guys, I can't remember if Lee was there too or not. Oh, they were supposed, as far as I understand, nobody told me that about this
operation.
No, nobody told me that about it. As far as I understand, I was supposed to go and arrest the man. But what?
All right, let's stop it there and break it down a bit. What is he talking about there?
Okay, what the general was talking about is somebody who was a member of the National Liberation Army and took part in the actual attack on Gary's defense force at Trublu. But the point the general was making is that he really didn't want to be a revolutionary. He wanted to be a bandit, because on the day of the revolution, a couple of hours after they took control of the country, he wanted to take some of the same men and go and break Barclays Bank and take money. And like Austin said, revolutionaries don't do that. That is banditry. And so Sean Phillip actually fell from grace on the morning of March 13th, 1979. I can tell you something also, because I happened to speak to one of the soldiers who took part in the raid on the defense force. And he didn't really see Sean Phillip as a really big army man, because he said to me that when they were about to attack Fort George to capture it, he said Sean Phillip gun got jammed, and Sean Phillip didn't know how to take apart a gun. So he said he doubted Sean Phillip's military capacity. And H.A. was going on to say, look, Sean Phillip then took a Land Rover and go down to Gary's small little inn down in the south, and proceeded to go inside there, basically illegally, and took all the drinks and bring it to his home in Monterey. The point he's making, revolutionaries not supposed to behave that way.
Yeah. He mentioned the Budlal brothers. Those names keep coming up every time. Nelson, we spoke about the Budlal. We spoke about Tivoli. We spoke about the Rasta. We spoke about marijuana. We spoke about the plantation. We spoke about that. So I want you to summarize this a little bit. Why the Budlal brothers keep coming up so often in the whole conversation on the revolution?
The real soldiers pre-March 13th, those that carry the military weight for the AGM were mainly the guys from Tivoli. There is a guy called Eric that I don't know his surname, but he was the one responsible for helping putting the agro-industrial plants together. He would testify that most of the missions that were carried out were basically carried out by most of the guys that were from the Tivoli area. So they were like the military wing. Although you find you had guys that went to train like H&M, Headache, and some of the guys that went to training Guyana. There were 12, actually 12 of them that went to form what you call the National Liberation Army, 11 men and 1 woman. They, when it came to the real bold work, the military work for the party, it was basically the guys from Tivoli. But mind you, I must say the reason why the NLA was formed was mainly because there was an attempt, there was effort, there was the thinking of the revolution was that we would have to take out Gary militarily. So that is what happened. And in terms of a unified force, the Tivoli force was extremely cohesive. So you had people like Teddy Victor. So when one mentioned earlier on about the two persons coming together, it was the Jewel and Mark to form the new Jewel movement. You had people like Teddy Victor and Sebastian and some of those guys are them from the St. David area that actually came together to form the Jewel. They were the ones that were mainly the agitators. And so when MOB came and they led the protests in Los Angeles, they joined together, they formed the NGM, later on with Bishop and Eunice Whiteman. But so that is why the name Tivoli came up. When the story was mentioned about Strand Philip and Hudson mentioned, H.A. mentioned that they joined with the Tivoli troops. I'm not so sure. I believe there was some bad blood that went along there was some bad blood between, maybe I believe it had to be mainly with Bernard and Strand Philip. And so when the bomb blast went off, within 10 minutes, while Morris was making his deliberation and addressing the nation, the guns were being shot at Strand Philip. So within 15, and there is precedent to that, and you will see that happening later on in terms of the quick timing that decision was taken in order to eliminate or to execute Morris. Is a similar pattern that started with Strand Philip.
So the bomb blast, that'll cut you, but I want to put that into perspective. The bomb blast in Queens,
June 19, 1980.
right? That was an assassination attempt on Morris.
Yes, I believe it was an assassination attempt on the leadership.
Okay.
Morris included. Yeah.
Right. Worme, do you?
Okay, let me go back a little here. Now, it is my understanding, and the general himself confirmed it because I had heard it before, that the Budlal brothers were not part of the group that went down to Gary's Defense Force.
No, they were not.
They never took part in that initial assault on the barracks at Trublo. When the revolutionary leaders went on the radio, when they captured Radio Free Grenada, it was then Radio Grenada, but they named it Radio Free Grenada. They then make an appeal for Grenadians to come out to help with the consolidation. And it was at that stage the Budlals and them got involved, and they moved down into Grenville and captured the police station. But they were not involved in the initial assault. I think the initial assault had about 52 people involved in it, but the Budlals were not. Now, coming to the bomb blast, by then there was tension between the Tivoli groups, the army, not only the Tivoli, the Rastas, there were other people who had fallen out with the revolution. Now, the bomb blast was really, like Livinston said, aimed at wiping out the leadership of the NGM. Now, there's something significant that happened here. And I asked H.A. about it, but he said he didn't have the information. The question was, were you aware that the people who actually planted the bomb were known to the NGM? Because my information is, and it came from the Tivoli group, I'm not going to call the name specifically, who had told me many years ago that the NGM had a bomb specialist here to teach people how to make bombs. And people in Tivoli knew how to make bombs. And the bomb that was used at Queen's Park were made of the same material and technology that this expert from outside brought in. So the many times they saw fragments from the bomb, they focused on Tivoli. And H.A. said that they had intelligence that Strawn Philip, and he called certain names from Tivoli, were seen in Queen's Park the night before, planning something. And that is why they moved in that particular direction.
Two things, Junior. The first thing, I think you probably was a little off with the report as it relates to the March 13th on the morning, and that is eyewitness report. Now I'm telling you, it's not hearsay. On March 13th, we were awakened. I was awakened because where I live close to the main assembly point where most of the guys are named to hang out. This place we used to call the buggy. There are about 4:30. People like Kennedy Boudlars, but in particularly Kenneth Boudlard, and maybe about 20 or so guys, including people like Cardwell Taylor that came from the Paradise area. They joined forces. So while the attack was going on in the Chublo barrack, maybe not at the same time, but I can tell you way before they captured Radio Free Grenada, the Tivoli troops were up and about firing at the Tivoli police station and taking over the police station. Remember, most of the guns that were stolen from PBC ended up in the Tivoli area. So in terms of guns, etc., we that was not that short supply. So the Tivoli troops were the one that went and took over the airport, Grenville, Tivoli, Hermitage, Montreal police station, Sortes, and the last police station to be taken over in the evening time in Grenada was Goaf. That was the last follow. So no, Tivoli troops were not involved in the attack in the Trouble barrack. But it was not when they went on the radio. The action and the fighting and the retaking of some of the police stations were happening way before, led by the Tivoli gangs. They were later on joined by people like Teddy Victor that came up from St. David, which is maybe around 6:30, 7 o'clock in the morning on March 13th. They were joined by Teddy Victor, came up and joined with the Tivoli group. As it relates to the technology, that the information, in making the bomb, I think you're probably correct that there was some know-how with some persons in the Tivoli and particularly the Bongchos area that had that information, that know-how in terms of the bomb making. I believe that I still maintain that Strawn Philip had nothing to do with it, and based on my limited information as it relates to what went on in the bomb blast, I don't believe there were any persons there in the likes of any of the Boudlal guys, because people like Kenneth Boudlal and Kennedy Boudlal was already in jail.
Kennedy was in jail. Kennedy was in jail. Kennedy was in jail, but some of the other Boudlal brothers were out.
No, Kenneth was in hiding. He could not have been in town. And I know for sure he was not in St. George. Roland J. Boudlal was also in hiding. So the point I'm making is that they could not have seen them in town the day before with Strawn Philip. I believe Strawn Philip was just a setup. There was a need to execute Strawn Philip, and they used that as a watershed to execute Strawn Philip.
Well, I want to just put in and say something. Now, if you listen to the entire interview, you would notice that General Austin was saying that when it came to if you want to call it the execution of Strawn Philip, he said these were reports given to him.
Agreed.
And and he also made a point further that some of the reports that were given to him coming out from the intelligent people, later on, he began to doubt some of them.
Right.
And he pointed specifically to the report that was given to him on October 19, 1983, as regards the event on Fort Rupert when Morris was killed. And he said openly that he has begun to doubt. He has doubts about some of the reports that were given to him because he got some false reports.
Are we saying that some of the PRAs or some of the militias or some of the military was giving the general incorrect information?
That is what the general said. And
but
what
not only
the
that,
general was saying to me in the interview, you have to understand, there were two forces at work in the revolution. Cord had his side, and you had another side who supported Morris. It so happened that Cord's side took control of the army. They took control of the party. Morris became more like a figurehead, in the revolution. They needed Morris because of his links to the masses, but to them, and I'm talking about those who supported Code. Remember, Code was their ideologue, not Morris. And if you, Livinston might have known that also, that in the early days of the revolution, Code was the party ideologue. And for people to get promoted, even in the party and in the army to an extent, you had to pass through Bernard Code hand, especially in the party. He was the ideologue. And for anybody to get advancement, Bernard had to give you the blessings. If you didn't meet Bernard's blessing, you couldn't go up.
Correct.
Right. Right. Okay, so let me bring you guys into perspective where we are right now. We're talking about, we are at the point right now where we're talking about the relationship between the general and some of the PRA or some of the military. We're learning that quite possibly what the general is saying is that quite possibly he was getting incorrect intelligence, and some of the information was probably not given to him or it was incorrect, right? Um, but what is important? I want to get to that is the relationship that the general had with Cord, and were there different fractions? Because one of the things that came up in your interview, George Worme, when you asked the general about the statement that he read out on the radio, and I know we're going fast forward a little bit, but that kind of shows the relationship. He said that the information was given to him by Cord, and he thought it came from the Central Committee, but it was in fact something that was written by Cord and handed to him. But the general read a whole statement where he called, I mean, he made derogatory mentions of Bishop, and he said all sorts of things, but he still read it, right? It kind of shows that Cord, it paints Cord in a way as a very vindictive person, someone who hates Bishop, who want to do anything to take over power. He's not interested in two head or two double leadership. He wants right. He wants to be the head. What's your take? What did General say about Cord and the relationship that he have with Cord?
Okay, I will come to that, but I want to tell you something. As you mentioned, the Code Morris issue, there was something that came out in the first interview in which the general made mention of it. I heard it for the first time from Kendrick Radix at night in the Market Square, maybe around 1984. When both Morris and Bernard were in England studying, Cord had written a letter to Morris in which he indicated that he is going to go back to Grenada and get involved in politics and become the prime minister of the country. And when he did that, he wanted Bishop to become his deputy.
Oh.
But as it turned out, Morris became prime minister, not he. So understand that. Now, I used to work in a radio station, Radio Free Grenada, until maybe around 1982. As a matter of fact, my good friend Peter David is the one, and along with Camus, that fired me. So, my good friend Peter David and Camus fired. Anyhow, I have since moved on. I hold no animosity towards them for that. As a matter of fact, I think maybe it was a blessing in disguise because I went on, and here I am today. Now, you have to understand what was happening inside the NJM in 1983, October to be precise. I heard when General Austin went to read that speech, the people who taped it tell you that they stopped him a couple of times. General, ain't something good. Start over. I've heard so from people who work there, because remember, I worked there, so I knew people.
Right.
The other thing you have to understand too, the battle lines were clearly drawn. It's either General go down with Morris, lose his life, or he find a way to survive. And I think he threw in his lot with the Code group to survive.
Yeah.
Right.
Junior, earlier on, I think
Yeah.
I made a statement. I told you. I think in our last interview, I said to you that the general was basically a figurehead, like the
Yeah.
governor general, and so was Morris. They were basically figurehead. If as early as 1980, yeah, they were telling him he was not aware. He didn't give the command to go and pick up Strand Philip. That is to tell you how long he was basically um, dethroned. You know, he had no thing. And when one mentioned, when George one mentioned about reading that statement, one of the soldiers had asked him, AJ, you believe what you're saying? When he was reading the statement, and AJ said, yeah. He said, well, okay, you got to read it over. Make sure you song as if you believe it. Make sure you song as if it is true. So I mean, all these things that were taking place with AJ. I think when you come back to 1983, it was his survival mode. He had to go into survival mode. So whatsoever happened, I mean, it was a matter of survival. It was not about what he preferred, what he liked. He chose to survive.
Yeah.
I want to make an additional point here. Now, relationships were always bad between Hudson Austin and Bernard Code from day one. HA had brought in a vehicle into the country. Bernard had passed a law that this vehicle cannot be over a certain amount, I think 1300 cc. HA went and bringing this vehicle above. Bernard Code said, no, you can't get out on the road. No, HA was mad. Morris always used to have to step in to defend HA against attacks from Bernard Code. So relationships were never good between Bernard Code and Hudson Austin. So it begs the question, well, how come HA ended up on Code's side in October 1983? And my contention is that it was either or. And he
Well,
decided.
the person that was in charge of the everyday operation of the army gave HA the choice. They said, imagine there are two tanks coming down the road. You are in the middle of the road. You must choose one. So HA, they gave him a clear. It was very clear. HA, you can't stand up in the middle of the road. You got to choose.
I mean, you have
So
to understand.
you
You have to understand too that in October 1983, when the vote came, the vast majority of them voted for joint leadership, and they belonged to the Bernard Code side. I think there was only about 2 or 3 of them who voted against it. HA abstained because he had just came back into the country. But by then, the Code side had total control of the Central Committee.
You know, based on the interview, we're gonna go back to it again. Based on the interview and what HA said, it seems as they were bad blood with him and Cord from the get go. It seemed so when he read that statement, it kind of threw me off because if he's saying that he even in one part he called Cord a damn fool, right? So if there's so much bad blood between he and Cord and he distrusts Cord and he don't like Cord and all this, the worst thing you could say about Cord, but still making statements or seems like he's taking the side of Cord is a contradiction of the understanding of Hudson Austin. So I don't know where he stands. I don't know where he stood at that point in time.
No, you have to understand something also, that although he was general of the army, it was more or less a ceremonial position because HA spent most of his time in the ministry, in charge of construction. So in terms of the day-to-day running of the army, it was basically Lane that was running the show because HA was not really in the army. He was more involved in ministerial duties.
Right.
So you have to understand that.
Okay. Let's go back to another excerpt from part 2 of the interview with HA. Check this out.
NGM itself, through a foreign expert who was brought into the country by the NGM to teach comrades how to make bombs as part of the struggle to remove the Gary government from power. How true is that? Because it is said that the Goodell boys knew, and one in particular knew how to make bombs. And the bomb that probably was used at Queenspark was very familiar. The making of that bomb was very familiar to the NGM.
Well, the truth about it, I ain't know, listen, I ain't know about nobody brought it to teach to make bomb. I ain't saying it's not here. I ain't saying it's not, because I was left out from so many things that nothing surprised me now that they do behind my back. Don't be surprised if Morris said no. Don't be surprised. I am not saying no to it, you know, because from what I experienced from October 19th and what I experienced in the jail, I didn't say no to nothing. Nothing is surprising that happened. Because things used to happen, and Morris said no. Things used to happen, and Morris said no.
I'm going to come to some questions about that a little later. HA, I also heard that the NGM had its own medical team and used some sympathetic doctors and nurses to help treat any of its military wing that got injured. Our information that one person got a bullet wound during training, and a small hotel in the south around BBC Beach area owned by family members of one of the leaders was used to keep him in secret to receive medical care and attention. How true is this?
First time I heard that. The NGM had secret medical people.
They had doctors and nurses who were sympathetic to them. So my understanding is that one of the NGM military person in training got a bullet wound in the leg, and he was taken to, I think it was Beverly.
I ain't saying it's not here. I ain't saying it's not, but it would surprise me if that happened and a certain clique did that.
But as commander, you should know if any of your men get injured.
Listen, I'm telling you, things used to go on, I don't know. But when I asked Morris about it, even he know. And especially if I'm out of the country, as you would observe, this whole joint leadership thing was supposed to finish before I come back. Anytime I'm out of the country and I come back, something happens.
Which takes me to a question about the term that was used. Okay, you were the general of the army. Morris was commander-in-chief of the army. But then we heard this term of the day-to-day commander of the army, who seemed to be you at Lane. Explain that to us.
Let me tell you something. The first time I heard the term you day-to-day commander was in the court. In the court, I heard this talk about the day-to-day commander. Let me tell you how I put it. That was an invention for usurpation. A Bonard Code invention for usurpation. There was no such thing. There was no such post in the army. Even people, if you ask anybody in the army about day-to-day commander, the first time I heard that was in the court. We had the commander-in-chief, we had the general, we had 2 lieutenant colonel also, and Lane, who was deputy commander. We had Einstein Wizard, who was the chief of staff, and that was the command. Then we had the Lorax, the captain, the lieutenant, and so on. I never heard the term day-to-day commander till I reached the court. That was a term that they used to usurp the function of the commander.
A Bonard Code ploy.
Yeah. his invention. That was a Bernard Code invention, right?
All right. So again, accusing Bernard Cord of a lot of things. He's accusing Bernard Cord of the day-to-day operation and basically overriding his powers that he was duly supposed to be. Where else did this conversation went warm? What else was concluded after this part of the interview?
Uh, okay, I mean, I just want to go on to something a little bit different. Because to me, the outstanding thing that came out in that interview with Hudson Austin, the second interview, is a statement he made about Code coming to a meeting of the party and with a proposal to change the name of the party from New Jersey Movement to the Communist Party of Grenada. I think that was the most striking thing in the entire interview. Code was defeated, of course, Code, with the proposal. Now, that in itself showed the ideological differences among the leaders in the revolution. Now, to me, what the general was saying there, it was showing some madness on the part of Code. I mean, how could you, given the fact that in the 1980 period, there was a serious Cold War going on between the United States and the Soviet Union, and there was no government or no ruling party in the Caribbean that had the name communist in it. And Bernard came with that proposal to change the name of NGM to the Communist Party of Grenada. That to me was the most striking part. And this is something one can elaborate on because it will give you an understanding as to what happened on October 19, 1983, between the various factions of the NGM.
It also shows the ideological difference between Bishop and Cord,
Of course.
because he said that that proposal was struck down so quick. That was struck down so quick before you could have wink. So obviously nobody else was a part of or wanted to be a part of changing it to the Communist Party, right? Nelson.
I don't think it has to do with just a changing ideological. I think it had to be strategic. It was not a good strategy to do that because it was going to draw the attention, negative attention, I would say, from the US. And you didn't want other persons in the region to be looking at you as having or taking that bold stand. So I think that was probably is a strategic decision. And if it was turned down, because I can tell you for sure, the people that were sitting on the Politburo, the Central Committee, they were always in the majority supporting Bernard. But if you want to look where that whole divide came from, the divide started from the very beginning, the one of the revolution. As I mentioned, some of the guys that were the real revolutionaries, and I said that in my previous interview, the Teddy Victor and them that were laboring hard in order to get the groundwork done from the St. David area, the guys from the Tivoli area, people like Ralph and them from River Road and some of those other guys on them, people like James Harry from St. Patrick. If you recognize what happened at the very day, the only person that got a role as a lieutenant in the army was Kennedy Boudreau. All the other guys that were part of Orel, that were almost handpicked by Bernard Code as his student, those were the guys that were emulated. Those were the guys that were put in key position. So that need to have control over the party apparatus and to from day one was strategically done. And those guys were placed in high position within the military and of course within the party. Apart from that, the number of persons, the small grouping that remained NGM supporters, who had to, Worme actually said that earlier on, they had to be screened, even just to become party members. And they reached to a point that, so you reach to a point where you find that those that were trained those that were militarily or committed, those guys and them were not so much enthused. They were not rewarded. But those that had the same ideological background or had the confidence of Bernard, those were the guys that were rewarded. If you want to fast track that, if we are going to fast track that to October 19th, when the RMC was formed, you had 16, 17 guys. One of them, Tan Bartholomew, the only person from out of St. George. Every of the other guys were from the town. Out of that, maybe 14 of them were from the St. Paul area. So it became an incestuous relationship. I mean, and if it was happening in the next country, that would have been considered as tribal warfare, tribalism. Because everybody that were elevated, that were in that high rank, was from this narrow geographical area in Grenada. So that alone can tell you the thinking and where the party was going. It was not all inclusive at all.
Right. Okay, I wanna push ahead a bit, right? And talk about October 19th and move into October 25th, right? One,
I think we have a question to answer. Remember, Specky had asked a question.
yes, Specky.
Right,
I want to ask that question as well. Specky was asking about if March 25th should be, if October 19th should be Thanksgiving instead of the 25th. We'll touch on that. But here's the question: what happened as far as from what HA's perspective? What happened the days leading up to October 19th, the day that Maurice Bishop was assassinated? What is the general saying?
Well, I mean, he touched it briefly, yeah?
Right.
He didn't elaborate because there are some things he did not know. Remember, there were delegations from the Central Committee that were meeting with Maurice Bishop to kind of try to reach a resolution of the problem. But the general was not on any of the delegations, huh? So he cannot really talk specifically about what were discussed. And he even went on further to say that he was left out of a number of the meetings. So he can't really tell you what the nitty-gritty of the discussions were.
Was it purposeful that Bishop leave the country? Was it set up in that way?
Well, I think there was a proposal. One of the proposals I've heard is that Ewart Lane had come up with a proposal that Bishop should probably go to Cuba and spend some time and cool himself out there.
Not Cuba.
No. So if Bishop gone out of Cuba, who then will become the prime minister of the country? I have to ask that question.
No, but I think the trip when Bishop left, it was to Hungary. The trip to Hungary was already planned. It was something. So
I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about as part of the settlement of the dispute. One of the proposals that came up is that Bishop should go and cool himself in Cuba. I ain't talking about the trip to Eastern Europe.
I understand now. Yeah,
that is something totally different.
Right.
Now, you see, you have to understand certain things that went on in October 1983. And I can say I got it from Ian St. Bernard because I asked him. When the crowd freed Maurice Bishop, they went up to his home and took Maurice. Maurice was really supposed to go to the market square and not the fort. Now, I'm not going to say it, but I have information as to who took Maurice from on top Market Hill and let him go down and go up to Fort Rupert. Ian St. Bernard was asked by Central Committee members to go and establish communication with Maurice and them so they could resume the negotiations. By then, they were on Fort Frederick, but the lines of Fort Frederick were cut. So he went over to what we call the Mad House over there and make a call. And it was Vincent Noel and white man who answered the call. And he put forward a proposal to them, let me resume the negotiations. The response that they got was, and they specified, negotiations are over. Tell Lane, Cornwall, and Usu to go and surrender to the nearest police station. That was what was communicated by Unison and them on Fort Rupert to them on Fort Frederick. So you know what it became then after that? Is either I kill you or you kill me.
Right.
That is what was the state of play on October 19, 1983. And these men had the military machinery in their hands. And then the decision was taken to send down troops from Fort Frederick to Fort Rupert.
Who
And
gave...
there,
Go ahead, George.
and what I am saying there, I would challenge any of them to come, and when I say any of them, I'm talking about those from the code side to challenge that, because I can tell you that information about the telephone call, I got it from Ian St. Bernard himself. He was a major in the army, and he was a Central Committee member.
Right. Let me bring everyone up to speed, because I listen, I get it, guys. The whole story about the revolution, the invasion, the assassination, it could get a kind of... I could understand that you guys probably figure it out that it's a whole long story, and a lot of people might fall off because it's so much pieces. But you have to kind of understand what preluded the other, right? So where we are right now is the Maurice Bishop returned to the island and was placed under house arrest. He was under house arrest. The question that a lot of people are asking is, why? Why was he under house arrest? And who placed him under house arrest? He's the prime minister. Who made the call to place him under house arrest? Was it Code?
Well, Austin said in the first interview that the decision to put Morris under house arrest, it was one taken by Code, Ewart Lane, and Cornwall. He was clear on those three names.
And what was Austin's position? What was Austin's position on the house arrest?
Well, he never answered that question. What was his position on the house arrest? But what I would say to you clearly, that October 19 was an attempted coup by Code and his oral group on NGM. They wanted to take control of the revolutionary process for themselves.
Right.
So there were a series of meetings, and at one of those meetings, Maurice had agreed to the whole suggestion of joint leadership. Later on, he went to Hungary and he came back. He reneged on that commitment. So from Hungary, one of the things that really disturbed the Central Committee was the fact that he passed through Cuba and he did not inform them that he was going to Cuba.
Right.
So they were extremely angry that he went to Cuba without getting the blessing and the permission. So on arrival, at that next meeting was scheduled, and he changed his mind. So from then, a decision was taken by the CC, because as far as the CC was concerned, it was no longer one-manism. It was no longer the ultimate or the paramount leader. It was the Central Committee that was running the show, and every man had to fall under the directive of the Central Committee. So of course, Maurice reneged, and they decided to place him under house arrest. And they also said that they placed Bernard under house arrest in order for them to have a cooling off period so that the whole thing would be settled. And then the rest start spiraling. Learning that people they brought Maurice to the radio station to denounce the rumors, etc., etc. But people start getting wind that he was under house arrest. The students start flooding the street on the 18th. And so by the 19th, when they went to release him. And I think we know some of the other story. But when they placed Morris on the house arrest, because it was a decision of the Central Committee, and he decided he was no longer the prime minister, because as Worme said, it was basically now a coup. Then there was only one other person that was in charge. That other person was in charge was Bernard, because there were two leaders. One changed his mind, the other had agreed. And let me just backtrack. In 1982, and you should have that information, when Bernard he resigned from party activity, from being the strategist of the committee, but he kept deputy political leadership of the NGO, of the country. When he resigned, his resignation speech was basically, you expect me, Bernard, to be the only one managing those that step out of line, that do not follow the mandate of strict Leninist discipline. When you are guys ready, then I am going to come back. When you are ready to show maturity, political maturity, I am going to come back. But what was very important, the day that Bernard Coad resigned, so two things are really striking. The day that Bernard Coad resigned, Kendrick Radix was sacked from the Politburo. Ewart Lane, James, and Ventu were added to the hierarchy of the party. So one of so-called supporter of Morris was ejected, and three other persons were brought in. But also quite significant, the only person that ever resigned from a high position within the NGM and could go at will and could come back and still had the confidence of the party was Bernard Coad. No one else. Everybody else that played a role, revolutionary in the army, in the party, and decided taking a hiatus. They want a couple leave, a 6 months leave or so, or they fed up with something and they express any disagreement. All those persons were placed under serious manners or heavy manners in the Richmond Hill prison. None except Bernard Coad. So when Bernard Coad came back in, his justification for stepping back, because at that meeting when the Central Committee, they said they believe in joint leadership, and Bernard Coad had certain strength, and Morris had certain strength, but Morris had certain weaknesses. And part of his weaknesses was his womanism, his smoking of the cigarette, his ill-discipline, his petty bourgeoisie tendencies. So when all this was showed up, the man that would help steer the party was Bernard. So they wanted to join the strength of Bernard with the so-called strength of Morris. And at that meeting, that final meeting, it was Bernard praised the troops for the clarity in political maturity. Yeah? So he came back now because others were ready to discipline the one person that was showing weakness, Leninist weakness in terms of adhering to or implementing strict Leninist principles. So on the 19th, a juggernaut took place, everything exploded. But again, when they went on the 4th, and the guys were lined up, Morris and his colleague, they take only one man. It had to be, you see, if you look at it, if today somebody passed and they decide to execute a policeman in Grenada, you would know, particularly a high-ranking officer in the police, that the whole police force would be in search of that person. Yeah? So we know that. So when a prime minister and his colleague were lined up and executed, and 6 or 5 days passed, and nobody called for the arrest or detention or detaining or the identification of those that killed and executed those colleagues, we know it was something that was ordered. I thought it was extremely disingenuous, when Bernard spent so many years in prison and then he wrote the book, The Grenada Revolution, and he still claimed that Morris and the guys and them died because one of the comrades got shot and the guys and them got harassed, and so in the crossfire, they killed Morris, regrettably. And I thought, wow, you spent all these years in prison. You come out, you wrote that book, and you still claim that Morris died through crossfire. And I say, wow, they really take Grenadians as fools. So let me just stop there for a while.
Yeah. Okay. So I want to get into George. You could chime in there, but I want to focus in on that day now, October 19th. The process of getting Maurice Bishop from house arrest when he's supposed to go to the market, but they end up bringing him up to the fort. On the fort, the assassination. Who gave the orders?
I just want to clarify something. Let's establish that when Bishop was put under house arrest, it was because of the rumor that came out that allegedly said that Morris gave instructions to Cletus St. Paul and Errol George to go and tell certain people that Bernard and his wife were planning to kill him. It was then Morris was put under house arrest. Okay, Bernard should have been under house arrest, but unfortunately he was not, because records would show that Bernard even went and hold audience with the Cuban ambassador to find out certain things which were very important.
Right.
Reading Revolution. But coming back to the events on the fort, if you ever read the book by a High Court judge from Belize, Justice Smith, who came into Grenada and interviewed a lot of the players. He interviewed a gentleman by the name of Manly Phillip, who was working with the army on the fort. And Manly told Justice Smith that after Bishop was captured, the telephone in the communication room was constantly ringing. He then attempted to answer it. And when he did, it was Lane on the other end asking for Abdullah. Okay? By then, Bishop was already lined up on the top square. There was a conversation between Abdullah and Lane. He did not know what Lane said to Abdullah. But Abdullah left after the conversation. And then the machine guns and then went off after. What did Lane tell him? I don't know. Lane will have to say.
Right. Now there have been documentaries that where Abdullah claimed to be the person who I'm paraphrasing if that is in fact what was said, but in essence he was the one that pulled the trigger, right? But wouldn't that order have to come from the general or the higher ups? Like if he's a militia or if he's a soldier, he don't make that decision by himself. That decision have to come from a higher authority. Wouldn't you agree?
Well, I mean, of course, the general explained it, when he said, look, I am the commander, the general of the army. I'm expected to give certain orders. Lane on his own as deputy commander cannot give anybody the authority to execute anybody. What the general went further to say is that Lane must have gone to Bernard Code and hold a communication. Some conversation took place between Lane and Code for anything like that to happen. That is what the general is saying. Now, the general went on further to say, look, when I asked what happened, they give me a report. He said he believed the report, but it is not until years after a soldier girl who witnessed the execution told him what she saw. And what she told him was vastly different from what his comrades in the leadership of the NGM said to him. She said she saw Abdullah line the men up and shot them. The report that they gave the general, he said, was that Bishop and them were killed in crossfire. But that is a total lie, because in the trial it came out very clear. Jacqueline Craft's mother told the court, and I was there, that she and Jacqueline, after the firing had died down, she and Jacqueline were going down the fort. And as they reached on top of the hill, Lester Redhead Goat stopped Jacqueline. She said, Miss Craft, you could go, but Jacqueline, no, you go so. So that is a lie that these people were killed in crossfire. As a matter of fact, I can tell you straight up that after the firing on the ops room where Bishop was, and Bogman, who was inside there with them, told them stop the firing, people dying inside there. The command said, come out with your hands in the air. And Morris and all of them came out as so directed. So they did not die in no crossfire. They did not die in the ops room. That is crystal clear. So any Central Committee statement that these men died in crossfire, as later read by Austin on the night, is a total lie.
Okay, let's jump to the phone lines. Let's jump to the phone lines right now. Caller, where are you calling us from?
Yes, your good friend Elimas Gilbert, as usual.
Elimas Gilbert, the inspector.
And I'd like to take part in that conversation because I almost lost my life. I was in Form 1 in SAS. Mr. Worme, how you doing? I don't know if you remember 2 years ago, me and you was on Morris Bishop International Airport waiting for our flight and we was discussing the revolution. So darling,
I remember, man. Good to hear you, man.
Okay, yeah. How you doing, Mr. Nelson?
I'm pretty good, my brother.
Yes, Mr. Worme, I want to direct that just 2 questions to you. I listened to the interview with Austin. I listened part 1, 2, and 3. And I did not hear you ask him about the killing that took place in Plains or Cook Plain. Remember when Lals and them guys and them got killed? I was there, a little boy. I went and looked at it. And up to now, people asking if it's the PRA or if it's Duck and Debbie. I remember they end up killing Duck and them. That's the first one. And I want to mention something. No, I'm not defending Bernard. I only telling you because I follow it all my life. I listen to the good, I listen to the bad. I only telling you what I heard by people who was around him. Even his driver said to me, Specky, when Bernard got the news that Morris died, he said, oh, F. You know what F mean? I don't want to pronounce it. He said, oh, F, the revolution done. I heard that on many occasions. I don't know how true it is, and I'm not defending him. But I heard that when he get the news that Morris died and others, he said, oh, F, the revolution done. All right, I'm listening. Thank you.
Okay, Specky, the question concerning the Plains killing was asked of the general, and he did address it. So it's there in the interview. I can't remember which part it is, but the question was certainly asked of the general. Because the information I had, and I asked him specifically, I said, General, look, I understand it was a military hit on the Stanislaus brothers by mistake. My information is that they set up a roadblock for Duck and Ayub and them. And they had information as to the vehicle Duck and them was using to move in the night. And they set up this roadblock. And a similar vehicle came up. And they opened up fire. They realized because a couple of them had died, and they realized, hey, look, this is not Doc and Ayub and them. And I was told that an order was given, kill everybody, because you can't leave nobody alive to talk. HA said the report they give him is that it is Doc and Ayub and them that killed the people. They wanted to kill Tan Bartholomew, and they had an idea as to the vehicle Tan was using, which was the same kind of vehicle that the Stanislaus and them were coming up with, they were using. But Tan had left in a different vehicle. So the report I give is that the Muslims and them thought it was Tan who was in the vehicle. And so they killed them. But he said, look, I am not doubting. He said, clear, I am not doubting your report because they give me a number of false reports over the years.
But let me ask you a question, right? While interviewing HA, did you get a sense that he's excusing himself from everything and blaming it that like he never knew or false information or information was not given to him? Did you get a sense that he's always excusing himself from any big decision?
I found him to be very shrewd. He's a politician. And HA was very careful how he said certain things. Because if he said it meant that you are bringing the revolution on trial.
Yeah, but they're not going to prosecute him now. He's in his...
No. Don't get it wrong. Not about he being prosecuted. You have to understand it's a revolutionary process. And now, would he say that the army used to kill people? I don't expect him to say that. Even if the evidence points to the army executing people, the general will not say that.
Yeah.
He was very careful, and he was very careful what he was saying. And when I was interviewing him, I smiled at some of the answers he gave me because I know he was very shrewd in answering the questions. HA is not as simple as you think, you know. He's very sophisticated.
Yeah. Nelson, come in here, right? And help me out because, as I said earlier, I find after listening to the interview, you would think the general have certain capabilities and abilities and power, right? And so far, I'm hearing all sorts of denial and excuse as to decisions that was taken, big decisions. Are you getting the same sense?
Yeah, I've been picking that up a long time. HA is not totally innocent to a lot of those decisions and things that took place. The jailing of all these persons, the establishment of Hopeville, the torture, HA had to know. He knew what was going on. He was part and parcel of the process. And I think in the long run, his lack of courage to stand up early finally caught up with him. And he didn't want to, get himself labeled too much. So I think he is deliberately giving what I call long arm from some of the decisions. He knew, but I also believe, that how the revolution was progressing, that HA was not considered to be very firm Leninist. He was not ideological. And so he didn't have the grace and the confidence in some of the decisions. I believe there's some things he really did not know. But to stay in that position for all this long time, I know they wanted him to stay. He seemed strategically. Morris, the governor general, had to stay because he showed that the country was not that radical. Secondly, Morris was the voice of the people. HA would seem to be somebody that loved Morris, was there to show that everything was going on. There was not this snake attitude or this behavior, devious attitude that was taking place to honor or to remove everybody that was associated with Morris. So HA was kept there as a figurehead, but HA had to know what was going on. Just one thing before we state, as the name Abdullah came up. Remember, Abdullah had just came from, was it from Cuba or Soviet, from Cuba to do some training, and he was placed. He was in Cuba. He was in Carriacou. He was brought in Grenada to deal to lead the security forces. So the security forces that was around Maurice, that force was removed. I'm not fired, but removed and placed on almost on leave. And Abdullah was the one that was responsible for Maurice security. So it was no strange thing. Abdullah was always calling for martial law, to bring in martial law. So it was known that Abdullah was ready and willing to obey any order given by the army, irrespective of what it was. He was always willing and ready.
Right.
Just a little correction here, in case people might misunderstood what Nelson is saying. He was not really brought and put in charge of Maurice security. He was put in charge of the squad that put Maurice under house arrest. That's the difference there, huh?
Oh, okay.
He was specially selected. They sent the Coast Guard up to Carriacou to bring him down.
Yes.
And I spoke to at least one soldier who was up there on Maurice compound. And they were pro-Maurice. And he said to me that they were looking at means to see how they could have gotten Maurice out of the house to escape with him. And the person said, Abdullah apparently never slept throughout that period that Maurice was under house arrest. Every time somebody walked up the steps or come down the step, Abdullah would come out from the little quarters there and see who it was.
Yeah.
So it tells you the man that Emperor selected to put Maurice under house arrest, to take charge of it.
And just for a programming note, Abdullah is someone that I have spoken to on about 3 separate occasions. The extent of the conversation with Abdullah was to come and sit with us, right? And let's have a conversation. Let's just talk, because I think it's good for history, for we to understand, right? He had said to me on one occasion that he would do it, because he think that it's good for even for his children and for the future generation to understand. But he never really took me up on it. He never came in and speak on it. I'm not sure if he's he's afraid to talk, or if he have some kind of arrangement that prevent him from speaking. But he was already prosecuted. They're not gonna double prosecute him. So I think it's high time that Abdullah and all these guys come out and speak and talk, and just so that we can understand the chronology of events. And the big question that everyone is asking: where is Bishop's body, and where is it? They're saying the American. They're saying that well, they're saying all kind of things. Nobody really know. Let me just play a quick clip, right, and then we're going to talk about October 25th. This is a clip that was our interview from GBN. Odette was doing the interview, and she posed this question to Bernard Cord. Take a listen.
The evidence is overwhelming. In fact, Nadia Bishop, in a radio program, I think GBN Radio, as far back as about 15 years ago, after 2 years of exhaustive investigation, said that the Americans have the bodies. Even Terry Marishow, no friend of mine, has made that clear more than once on GBN television. The fact of the matter is that the evidence is overwhelming.
That the Americans have
They are playing games. Yes, and they must stop playing games. They must stop playing games. The evidence is overwhelming.
Okay. On that note, we close tonight's edition of the GBN one-on-one program. I've had with me Mr. Bernard Cord.
All right, so that's the that's the big question, the $1 million question that we could never get an answer to. So try to help us understand this. They line up these guys against the wall. They shot them. What happened after that point? How is Bernard Cord now saying that the American have the body?
All right, let me attempt to answer the question. Now, after the people were executed on the fort, bodies placed in blankets. They were removed later the night. Abdullah was one of the persons who took part in the operation of removing the bodies. They were taken to Camp Calivini. And what I'm saying here to you came out in the Morris Bishop murder trial, which I covered. They were placed in a hole that was already dug, not dug for them. It was already dug as part of some work the army was doing down there. And the evidence came from, I think his name was Christopher Bowen, but it's clearly Bowen is his last name. He was the cook in Camp Calivini. And he said he was commanded by Abdullah to help him to drove tires and wood and whatnot to put down in the hole. And Abdullah threw gasoline on it and burned the bodies, burned the men. Now, after the Americans came in, Bowen took the Americans to the spot where this burning took place. The Americans took the remains, went away with it, and what the Americans later said is that they couldn't determine which was Bishop's body, which was that, because of how the thing was. They then gave it back to the authorities here. It was given to Bailey's funeral home, which was then Otway Bailey. And when you speak to the man who was running it then, Mr. Bailey, he said these body bags were sent to him, and he sent it up to his grave digger up in the cemetery, that is St. George's Cemetery, to dispose of it. Now, whether or not the Americans sent back what was taken, I'm in no position to say yes or no. But that is what came out.
Nelson?
But yeah, just to add something to that, I think all what Judge Worme just mentioned is probably what I've heard. It was also just stated that when Otway sent the body to the grave digger, because there was no, he just thought maybe it could have been a regular soldier that got killed, because remember that happened now after the 25th, right? The bodies were burned almost beyond recognition. For almost 3 days, they were burning those bodies. So the gravedigger thought it was an ordinary person. And the last information, I picked up, is that the bodies were just buried in almost like a swampy area, not in an area befitting that of somebody with any sort of stature, a place where you would bury a pauper. And the gravedigger, I can't remember his name. I don't know if it was Gabo or I don't know if you know the name, but I think that person already passed. But in his interview, he basically stated that is the swampy area where he buried the bodies. And some persons that were part of the MBPM were actually shown the spot, but they refused to accept the spot as that of Morris. So hopefully one day those bodies or those bones remaining might be matched.
Not bodies, but
pieces of bones, or or probably would be unearthed and then checked again to see what is there. But that is the latest I heard.
Now, you see, these people had enough opportunity to hand over the bodies to the families, what we call a Christian burial, because that's what we know. But my understanding is that the bodies were in such bad shape. I am told that the late Dr. Jensen Otway had suggested to them, put the remains in casket, seal it, and give it to the family. They can't open it. And then let them bury their loved ones. Because, look, man, the amount of bullets that this body get, I mean, they mash up people, you know. That's the truth. They mashed up the people. You see, and I want to make a point here, which people, which it might just shift a little bit, because it came back to the whole question of an ideological shift or ideological battle within the NJM. After the events on October 19th, I got in my possession a tape of an emulation ceremony that took place. It could have been around the 22nd or 23rd, around there, of soldiers. Not soldiers who really, not to emulate the soldiers who killed. It was an emulation ceremony for soldiers generally. And Selwyn Strawn addressed that emulation ceremony. I don't know, Livinston, you ever heard that tape?
Hold on, Livingston. Okay. Yeah, go ahead, Livingston.
No, I didn't
You
hear
ever
the
heard
tape
that
in person, but I heard extract from it. Yes.
Okay. Well, I listened to the whole tape. So what I'm talking about is what I heard him said on the tape.
Yes.
And it showed that deep ideological differences. Because Selwyn Strawn said that Morris Bishop had joined up with bourgeoisie elements to liquidate the Central Committee. And that he, Morris Bishop, was a social democrat. And he could not go beyond that. Because they, meaning the other majority members of the Central Committee, were all in favor of going the route of what we call democratic centralism, stroke communism. What more clear evidence you want about that ideological split in the NJM leadership that resulted in what happened on October 19th?
Yeah. As few of our viewers have saying, this is very depressing, and I know it would get there because this is history that was never told. This is information that we didn't read in history books. So I understand why people are feeling depressed after hearing this gruesome description, and I think Mr. Worme used a lot of adjectives to describe it, made it even more picturesque in our brain what actually transpired. So I could understand the depression and what people are feeling right now of how they dispose of the bodies and what happened, what transpired, the gunshots. They basically mince up the bodies. And it was a sad day in our history. So I understand how you guys are feeling right now. I myself, I mean, every time I hear this story, it really takes me in a kind of way. I have to kind of chill for a good couple of days. So I understand. So I want to move kind of ahead to 25th of October. Operation Urgent Fury. When did we know that the Americans was coming? Either one.
I think long before October. I want to say long. I'm talking in terms of days. Because the general himself, in the first interview, I asked him the question because I had picked up that information. And he confirmed, yes. He got information from the late Fox Bonham that the Americans were sending in troops. So they knew in advance that the Americans were coming. Now, by then, I mean...
Go ahead. Sorry, go ahead.
Yes,
go ahead.
Okay. By then, the code group must have known that the days were numbered. Because I heard that they even went to the Cubans and asked them for assistance to defend the country, which were refused, and quite rightfully so. Because if you listen to Fidel Castro when Bishop was killed, and the adjectives he used to describe them, the Cubans were not going to help them.
Yeah.
Right.
So they knew in advance that, I would say 2 days before, they knew that the Americans were coming.
I think I think Junior had announced their intention either very close to the 20th or the 21st, either the next day or 2 days after. It was known publicly that a ship was diverted from,
Lebanon.
was it Lebanon? And
Lebanon.
Yeah, and they were coming to Grenada. They were definitely coming. So that was extremely clear. I think what if anything we could learn from that era is like Morris, he was actually demonized, and the demonization didn't just start up on the night. It didn't start up in October. It was years of always informing the people that Morris was a bourgeois. He had bourgeois tendency. He's ill-disciplined, and the constant pounding and the constant isolation of persons that were around Morris again led to his what I would call demonization. So it reached to a point where it became so easy for those guys and them to carry on because now they accepted the fact that Morris was the ultimate threat to the revolution. And the only how to save the revolution from itself was to get rid of him one way. And that's for sure from the beginning, the idea was to execute him. But he was in the way. He was in the way. And he definitely had to get out. So I'm not surprised of the suggestion Worme said that was preferred to him, but ultimately he had to get out, and his role was not to be in the top echelon of the revolution at all, because apart from the ideological difference, I believe there was also ego. There was the need for greed for power.
Yeah.
There were some people that felt that the work was not being repaid. And the only how it could be repaid was to be known as achieving the highest position in the land. So I don't believe it was just ideological, because we can have difference in opinion and we could work things out. But when you reach to a point where you are the only person that can steer the ship, you are the only person that can save Grenada, then I think it took on a different kind of connotation.
Yeah.
So, yeah, and the followers start believing in that message, that he was demonized and then he was in the way, and then he's in the way of the true person and the only person that could make it happen. So he had to be gotten rid of.
Let me elaborate something here.
Yeah.
Bonatcourt's ambition was always to become prime minister of the country, the numero uno. Now, Bonatcourt resigned from the Central Committee on the Political Bureau in 1982. Something gone wrong?
No, go ahead.
Right. George Livinston then became the party ideologue. Now, I have never heard any of them complain of George and his teaching of Marxism, Leninism, or whatever you want to call it. Time was running out for Bonatcourt because there were some important events coming up in the country in a matter of months, which clearly would have strengthened Morris' position to me as leader of the Grenada Revolution. The international airport was going to be open. Fidel was going to visit Grenada. And Austin touched it because I asked him the question, and he was explaining these things. Morris' prestige would have grown among Grenadians in the diaspora. Could you imagine how much Grenadians would have wanted to be booking that first flight from New York or wherever to come and land on the airport and come to that big rally? Time was running out for Bonatcourt. So Bonatcourt staged this grand comeback. Revolution was in crisis, he go collapse. But tell me something. They had total state power. There was nobody in Grenada who could have challenged the NGM for state power in the country. And you hear Code side talking about the revolution will collapse in 6 months. Well, who was going to take state power from them? I couldn't see nobody, because there was no political party. The GLP, which was a major political force with Gary out, was literally dead. GNP, waste of time. So they staged this crisis in the revolution and to bring back Bernard with his grand coming, because Bernard clearly wanted to be the other joint leader before that 5th anniversary.
Yeah. Yeah. I want to focus a little bit on that 25th date, right? Because a lot of Grenadians, today is the anniversary. And on the 25th, Grenada celebrates Thanksgiving. So today is a public holiday in Grenada because on the 25th, the American soldiers came in. Now, what a lot of people don't quite understand about the American Revolution, the American invasion, sorry, not the revolution, the American invasion in Grenada, is that when the Americans came, they was actually very unprepared for combat. They was unprepared because they came in, they didn't have a good map of the country. They used tourist map and a few helicopters crashed before they even touched land surface in Grenada. A few American soldiers died. I mean, Grenada really fought back with the help of the Cubans. So it wasn't like it was an easy pickings for the American soldiers when they came. And they came with the intention or the idea or the sell-off to the world that there was American students that was at the university, the St. George's University, and they was coming to rescue those students. Now, the question is, I guess, the October 25th, should Grenadians celebrate that date as Thanksgiving Day? Because the American came. Did the Americans save us? And is it a Thanksgiving Day? Or should it be the 19th as a public holiday?
Let one go first.
I will answer it this way. If Haiti had sent troops into Grenada to get rid of Code Group, they would have been welcomed by the people of Grenada. Because they wanted to see the back of that bloody junta that had seized power. Now, I will say, take the issue to the Grenadian people. Let them make a decision, a determination on what they want. If they want to merge October 19th and October 25th or whatever, get the people of Grenada involved in the decision making.
You finish one?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. My take is slightly different. You see, what October 25th represents is a day. Well, I think we have to be thankful because not only did they execute the leader, not only did we have 3,112 persons that were in prison, not only did we had a camp for Rastas, almost like a concentration camp, and all the excesses that took place. All those things are true, but it's only Grenadians that can actually free Grenadians. So when the Americans came, physically we felt that joy, that thankfulness. So it is an important day in our history. Yeah, I believe it is an important day in our history, and we forever must express gratitude. Although we know the Americans have the devious plan, we knew that they wanted to come. I don't think they wanted to come on that actual date, but we gave them that opening because of what happened in Grenada. We were able to say, okay, well, all along we wanted to come, so we just opened the door. So they say, okay, they thought the door is open, so they step in. But in the optics of celebrating our history, nobody can actually free us. Nobody can actually make you free. Nobody can actually make a country rich or prosper. So I am thinking, on the other hand, if we look at the 19th, there are some very sane questions that we must ask. Are we going to martyr Morris and those that were executed? Are they the heroes? If they're the heroes, then we must be very clear in how we put the other persons. Are they the villain? Were they counter-revolutionaries? Because we must tell the story, and we must tell the story clearly. So I think it is important for us to probably look deeper at the 19th as a day for our people to recognize where we have made some serious blunder, where we probably, I think it is the greatest travesty that have been committed in the entire Caribbean in this last 100 years, what happened on October the 19th. And that day is a watershed. As the history could be good, it could be bloody, it could be bad, but it's our history. So I believe it is important to look at the 19th as a day, but put it in the right and proper perspective.
Okay. All right, Worme, we're at winding down time, so I'm going to get some last final comments from you guys in summarizing this whole entire long 2-hour long conversation here on Ride Along. Worme, I'll start with you. Let's summarize it and put it into perspective here.
Well, okay, before you do that, I just glanced on my screen and I saw where somebody said the CIA played a central role in the demise of the revolution.
No.
And I kind of laughed because I asked the general about that, and he categorically dismissed it. He said the revolution demise was all totally internal. There was no CIA involvement in the demise of the Grenada Revolution. It was all done by the revolutionaries themselves over what I call the greed for power.
Yeah.
In closing, I will say this. Just as how General Austin had the guts to come forward and explain his side of the tragic events in that month of October 1983, I wish the other active participants like Bernard Code, Ewart Lane, Usu, Bogo Cornwall, Chalky Ventu and them would come forward and give an explanation to the Grenadian people as regards those tragic events. Now, Mr. Lane has written a book, I think he called something about, I can't get the name right now.
I think it's and Now We Move or something like that.
Something like that, we move tonight or something. So something along those lines. But all he focused on basically was
March 13th.
the March 13th. Yeah. Not a word said about October 19th. Code wrote several things, and he's not zooming in on anything to do with those tragic events. As a matter of fact, I heard Livinston, is it Livinston who said, somebody from Code side said that on the day, he said, when they killed Bishop, they killed the revolution. Or
Specky had called and said that, a caller.
Oh, Specky that said that. Yeah. But I want to tell Specky this. And this came from the general himself. Because Code had came to the court and said that he was in some dungeon on the day and whatnot, and it's after he hear that. The general said openly, because Code said he had some kind of bad back, and he was laying down and whatnot, down there. The general said, that's a total lie. I spoke with him. What bad back? He had no bad back. He said he got a bad back when he attempted to commit suicide. That came out very clear. And let me tell you this. Not one of the so-called leaders, and I will be specific, not one of them from that oral group who I say staged a coup on the NJM, not one of them up to this day has come out and denied anything the general say. None of them. So it is important for them to come before the Grenadian people and explain to them their side of October 1983. It is about time.
Yes, I agree. Gentlemen, I thank you. I thank you so much. Mr. Worme and in you today. I thank you so much, sir. Because I think that you you started with the interview that you did with Austin. You probably started the domino effect, right? Where others might feel free to come out and speak. I would also say that I've spoken to and I'm in contact with Bernard Cord on. I've spoken to him a number of times before, and he did agree that he will come and speak with us on the program. That invitation is still out there because Bernard Cole happened to be an avid viewer of Ride Along. He's probably watching right now. So you probably studied domino effect that would lead to others coming out and speaking. We're open door policy to anyone who wants to come and talk here. And I mean, the time is due to hear from a lot of you guys. So thank you so much, Mr. George Worme, and the New Today. Mr. Worme, where could they get your papers? Where could they get access to your information that you put out there?
It's online at the New Today. .gd. It's online.
Okay. The New Today.
Let me just say one thing before we close here.
Yeah.
Junior, I want to say something
the
to
first
it.
interview we did with Bernard Cole, I remember doing a story, and I sent it through a third party to Bernard because I want him to respond to the things that Austin was saying. And Bernard's response was basically, after all these years, why attack me? That's not what I sent to Bernard. I wanted him to be specific in terms of reacting to what Hudson Austin was saying about him. And that invitation still goes out to Bernard Cole. If he wants me to fly into Jamaica to interview him, I will do it. Yeah. And at the same time I give Austin, I might give him more if he wants.
Right. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Junior?
Go ahead.
Yeah, I think that at sometimes I just want to follow up from what Judge Worme was saying as it relates to, people should come forward, or the rest of the soldiers, high-ranking officers should come forward. But I also believe we have to create a platform for them. And, don't just expect them to come forward, but, we must create the platform. I don't know, we had a commission of inquiry. I don't know if that is the best thing, but create a platform. But also, I think year after year, we have to explore other part of that whole puzzle that took place in October month. Example, I would like to know and have a discussion, like to find out who was the highest ranking officer that died fighting against the Americans. I would like to know. I would like to know the names of the Grenadian soldiers that took part. How many of them? What are the names? I have never seen a document that says so and so died from that village or that community. We have never heard the Grenadian soldier story. I've never heard an interview that said, "Oh, we went so and we fought, and that was what happened," etc. So I think we it is important. The whole month of October can be used to start to get people to understand. Also, a question I think sometimes we need to ask: did the RMC understand the regional and international significance of Maurice Bishop and the Grenadian Revolution in the Black struggle all over the world? Did they? I don't think they understood that. We were here in Grenada and they're concentrating on whether they could get Maurice or not. But it was such a dive. It was such a negative thing to get rid of Maurice, because Maurice and the Grenada Revolution meant so much to so much of the people outside there. So there are a lot of other questions I believe that can be asked, that to the general population and to the generals, that we can do other program every day for the whole month of October. So I know we ended now, and I think it was an interesting conversation. I hope we were able to shed some light on some of the issues. There are a lot of other persons outside there that have more relevant information that can share it. So it would be important, because people are still hurting. After 38 years, some people are still hurting, and people are hurting from on all sides of the divide. So we need to have a conversation, frank and honest, and some forum should be created in order to allow us to really, really talk. So I think I end.
Thank you so much, gentlemen. Worme and Mr. Nelson, we appreciate you guys all so much. and we will continue this conversation. And we do this every year. Nelson, we did it last year. We had a 4-part series in this conversation, and my aim is to my aim is to try to get information out to the people, because I remember as a child, I was probably 5-6 years old, but I remember certain things. I remember the helicopters coming. I remember they coming in and giving us peanut butter, right, ration, and that's the first time I taste peanut butter. And up to this day, every time I eat peanut butter, I remember the revolution. I remember the invasion. I remember the American soldiers with long guns and the banganet at the top. I remember all of these things. But I remember this. I remember. I mean, there's so much things I remember about it, but I just can't put it into perspective, because there have been so many different stories, and so many stories that still have not been told. So we really want to get all of this stuff, because that's why we do it every single year. But I thank you, gentlemen, Mr. Worme, for coming in and sparing your whole 2 hours of your day, sir. And of course, Christopher Nelson. Livinston Nelson. I don't know why I call you Christopher. Thank you so much for keeping in touch.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for having us. And keep on the good works.
Thank you so much, gentlemen. Yeah, guys, and thank you, guys. Wow. Let me tell you, I'm proud of the viewership here, because oftentimes when we have important conversations like this, people don't stick around to watch it, right? But you guys did, and I'm happy that you did. I'm very happy that you guys did stick around. Brian Grimes, thank you so much, because oftentimes people say, "Yo, anything that's good, people don't stick around and watch it." This was a good discussion. I know at some point in time it was kind of confusing, because there are so many particles at moving parts in this here, but you guys stuck around and you guys consumed the information, and that's good. We need to keep that history going. All right. Yeah, we need like a museum. They should have like it's too late anyway, but they should. It's kind of museum that could, my kids and my grandkids could learn more about what happened in October 1983. All right, guys. Anyway, thank you so much. I got to run way over time. Thank you, J Wanda FM, for locking in as well. Thanks to the folks that shared. Thanks for the folks who supported. Thanks to the folks who commented. Everyone. Thanks to my producer, Lois JJ. Oh my God, she works so hard every single day to ensure that we have content to bring to the fore, and she worked very hard on this particular program here today, and like she do every single day. So thanks to Lois JJ. Thanks to our moderators, Deanne Fraser, Gail Charles, and Kibbs, working behind the scenes and making sure that this program come off and everything keeps flowing as how it should on the program. Thank you guys so much. I also want to thank some of my sponsors who made it all possible. I haven't run an ad, guys. Don't move. Don't move, guys. I have to run this ad, and you guys have to watch it, because it's important. That's how we pay the bill. All right, that's how we pay the bill. I want to big up. Where is it? Boom, right here. All right. So if you're looking to get your rapid COVID test, you want to travel or you need it for work, you gotta contact All Pros Health Labs. Now, All Pro Health Labs, they are convenient and 24/7, and they come to you. They come to your home or office. If you need it for travel, if you need it for work purposes, you could get a quick rapid PCR test in half an hour, right? So call them. The number is 516-387-4246. That's 516-387-4246. That's All Pro Health Labs. All Pro Health Labs. You guys got to check them out and support the businesses who support us right here on Ride Along Live.
I feel like beat my chest.
All right, I got to tell you about also, don't go. Got to also tell you about
when I woke up this morning, I had
a Care Transition Clinic. Care Transition Clinic. They are also 24-hour nursing care. That's in Grenada. They have laboratory service, diabetic food care, COVID-19 testing. They also provide chronic disease management, home mental health, IV therapy, private nursing, wound care, post-hospitalization care, nebulization, after surgery, and physician consulting. That's in Grenada. It's called Care Transition Clinic. The number is 473-535-0307. You guys could call them up. If you have a family member in Grenada that needs the service, please give them a call right now. Again, the number is 473-535-0307. That's Care Transition Clinic in Grenada.
I'm blessed, I'm blessed, I'm blessed. I feel like beat my chest. I'm blessed. I feel like beat my chest. I'm blessed. I feel like beat my chest. Yo.
Yeah, again, let me tell you guys the number for Care Transition is 473-535-0307. After surgery, nebulizer treatment, post-hospitalization, wound care, private nursing, IV therapy, home health, nursing, chronic disease, COVID-19 testing, diabetes, foot care, and a whole lot more. Yes, yes, yes. Okay. Don't go. You guys gotta watch this as well.
Welcome to TD Bank, where you'll find the personalized attention you deserve and the legendary experience you expect. Let's do business. If you are a medical or dental practitioner, contact me to hear about our tailored lending solutions for residential mortgages, equipment purchases, practice-related commercial mortgages and refinance. Visit me at 500 Baychester Avenue to hear more about our full range of personal and small business banking solutions. See you soon.
Feeling hungry, grab a snack. Caribbean food delight. Jamaican patties, light and flaky. Caribbean food delight. Taste the difference. Caribbean food delight. Grab a patty, take a bite. Caribbean food delight. Quick and easy, grab a patty, take a bite. Caribbean food delight. Oh yeah.
Alright guys, thank you so much again.
I feel like beat my chest. I'm blessed.
You guys have to sing that one with me before you leave, eh?
I beat my chest. I'm blessed.
You guys have to sing that one with me before you leave, okay?
I beat my chest.
That's the deal. You guys have to sing this song with me before you leave, okay? That is mandatory, okay? Everybody press the thumbs up, press the thumbs up. Press the thumbs up, press the thumbs up. Press the thumbs up, press the thumbs up.
Say you know that Father God bless you. Start to jump up and shout, sing, whoa, see a banga, see a banga. Give thanks to the Father. Everybody, whoa, yeah, see a banga, see a banga. He is my provider. My back, my back, my back. The most I have my back, my back, my back. The big man have my back, my back, my back. The most I have my back, 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 back. Man, I feel so blessed. Man, I feel like beating my chest. I feel like I feel so free. Man, nobody happy like me. I feel like He provides my wants, He provides my needs, each and every day. I get on my knees. He provides my wants, He provides my needs, each and every day. So when I woke up this morning, I had reasons to sing. When I woke up this morning, I had reasons to shout. I know that Father God bless me, and that's without a doubt. So if you know that Father God bless you, let your praises come out. Sing, whoa, see a banga, see a banga. Give thanks to the Father. Everybody, whoa, yeah, see a banga, see a banga. need? If you're not satisfied, I know that it's greed. What more do you want? What more do you need? If you're not satisfied, go back on your knees. So when I woke up this morning, I had reasons to sing. When I woke up this morning, I had reasons to shout. I know that Father God bless me, and that's without a doubt. So if you know that Father God bless you, let your praises come out. Sing, oh, see a banga, see a banga. Give thanks to the Father. Everybody, oh yeah, yeah, yeah. See a banga, see a banga. He is my provider. My back, my back, my back. The most I have my back, my back, my back. The big man have my back, my back, my back. The most I have my back, 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 back. That's why I feel I beat my chest.
Thank you so much, guys. Don't forget to subscribe to us on YouTube. See you guys tomorrow. Bye bye. Good night.
I'm blessed, I'm blessed. I feel I beat my chest. I feel I beat my chest. I feel I beat my chest. Yo, I sing it.